So today I'm going to show you how to locate your cached locations. Now, if you haven't already done any kind of caching of emergency supplies, that's definitely something to think about. Maybe this is step 2. Step 1 is putting together your caches. But I think this video will also be helpful if you've never done any long-term emergency caching. What I'm going to show you in this video is how to use Google Maps to locate your caches. So there's no point of preparing if you can't access your preps. And the reason I like Google Maps, and I know you're going to dismiss it because in an SHTF grid down situation, you're not going to have access to Google Maps, the grid's going to be down, the cell towers are going to be down. Probably, but you still have a fighting chance, and this is why. You have at least 2 options with Google Maps. So one is you can download the maps for offline use, and as long as you have an active internet connection at least once every 30 days, Google Maps will allow you to store those maps on your phone, on your iPad, etc. So you can access them when you go to an area that has no cell signal or the grid is down, it's congested, etc. So if you're going to stash emergency supplies up in the mountains, Big Bear, Tahoe, there's a lot of places that are rugged, and that's a feature, but the bug is you won't be able to access your cell signal once you're up there, so you have to figure out a better way to locate the places you've stashed your supplies. And the way we do that with Google Maps is through waypoints and lat-long coordinates, and it's super easy. This is why I prefer Google Maps. And the second reason that Google Maps is a good way to keep track of where you've cached your emergency supplies is that you can export the list. So you can export the list, you can make an Excel document, a Google Sheet. It's great for sharing, but an even better way to share it is within Google Maps itself. So you can create a link that you can send out to your family members or people in your community prepping organization. And with that, you can do a couple things. So first, you can control who has access. You can leave it private, only you have access, it's not shared. You can leave it accessible only with a link, or you can just make it free and open to everybody on the web, and it's searchable. I wouldn't do that, but there are instances where that would be useful. The other thing is you can collaborate. So if you're part of an emergency organization, first responders, you have an emergency preparedness committee with your HOA and you've set up stashes throughout your community, that would be something that you might want everybody else to have access to. So you can make that a shared list. So everybody who has access to that, not only can they view it, but they can add their own additions. So maybe you are good at storing food supplies. Somebody else is good at storing first aid. Somebody else is good at storing warm clothes, charging supplies, you name it. You guys can work together, and instead of the extra steps of exporting this to a Google Sheet or Excel and then disseminating that, and then every time somebody makes a change you got to do the process all over again, with Google Maps you can do this in real time. So if I make a change here and somebody else makes a change a couple miles away and we're all sharing the same list, they will see the new waypoints. Or maybe we've moved a waypoint. Maybe they started a development on an formerly empty lot. Now it's housing development. You don't have access to that anymore. You want this list to be as updated as possible, as recent as practical. Now this I wouldn't consider totally watertight, but Pelican cases or the Harbor Freight knockoffs are great. And I would still put it in a double contractor bag. Make sure you're just following all the obvious precautions that you can. Nothing's foolproof, but give yourself a fighting chance. So this could be something that has pet supplies. This could be whatever you want, but there's 2 main considerations when you're caching supplies. Do you want to be redundant? Do you want to use the same set? Maybe you have a little bit of each. You have a little bit of first aid, a little bit of food, a little bit of charging, a little bit of water, a little bit of water filtration. Or do you want to have each cache location a dedicated category? Do you want to just cache food here? Do you want to cache water over there? Do you want to cache charging equipment, solar, USB cables, a few miles down that way? Think of the advantages and disadvantages to each. It's up to you, obviously. I can give you pros and cons for either approach. But redundancy is key. Why are we even caching in the first place? It's because if your house burns down and all your preps were there, if your house gets raided, if you can't make it to your house, you want alternative places to get some supplies. So you're not dependent on FEMA, you're not dependent on the government or the county, you're not waiting in line, you're not facing desperate people who are fighting for their families, which puts you in even further danger than the original disaster that prompted that environment. So you're giving yourself redundancy, and that's prepping at its most basic. 2 is 1, 1 is none. Have more than one, and not 2 of the same ideally. So multiple different ways to achieve the same goal in case one fails. So with Google Maps, and again, I prefer Google Maps over anything else. All right, guys, let me see. Can I squeeze in? Can I squeeze in here? So with Google Maps, what you can do is have a list. So what do you want to start with? And I recommend, before you even go to the location like we're at today, start at home. Figure out on your map where you want to place things. And that's going to do a couple things. First of all, it will force you to be organized. If you wait until you go to a place like this and you stash it and you save it, you know, that's fine. That's probably going to work. It's still going to work better than most people. What they do is they go to a place, they dig a hole, they try to make it look nondescript, so they hide it from everybody else, but they end up hiding it from themselves too. And then they say, you know, I'll write down the lat long. Sometimes they forget to do that. Other times they write it down, and then when they get home, they forget to do it, they've lost the note, etc. This avoids all that, because if you start at home, you start really organized, you know, excessive organization is rarely ever as much of a problem as the opposite. So you start at home, you look at the map. Here's a place where I want to place this. So I came here because I was looking at the satellite imagery, and this looks like a really good location. It's near a body of water. It's wide open. There's plenty of peripheral places in the heavy bush where I can stash things. So I already mapped out some locations. So what we're going to do is you go up to the 3 dots here, and then you go down to your places, okay? So you click on your places, and now you'll see the list. So I created waypoints, I created names for those waypoints, and I created lists to house all those waypoints. So it goes like this. Let's say you put your cache in this hole right here. You dig a hole. That would be a waypoint. Then you can give it a label. And I would recommend you always go in sequential order. So cache A, cache B, cache C. And the reason you want to get used to that naming convention is when you start naming rendezvous points, like for your family. So, okay, rendezvous point A is our home. Rendezvous point B is grandma's home. Rendezvous point C is the park down on Magnolia Street. So that way, when the communication is non-existent because the towers are down, your phone died, etc., you've already practiced with your family going in sequential order. You go home first. Then if you can't make it home, or if nobody is there, if you waited a reasonable time, then you would go to your grandma's home. And if nobody is there, you know that the next step would be the 3rd place. And likely you'll find somebody there. If nobody's there, then you would wait there. And eventually the other people would know where to find you, because they would go to A, they would go to B, they would go to C. All right? So that is the naming convention that you want to get used to. Same with your caches. So if this is cache A, I would name cache B the next place. And that way I know which order to go in. You know, it's not crucial, but it's something to get used to, naming conventions in an orderly, sequential order. So this you can label. You can label the waypoint, cache A. And then you can also add a note. So your note might have something like first aid kit, water purification. You can add that in the description for each note, so each waypoint. So let me show you this. I created a list called Stashed Cache GPS Lat Long. And here I have the drop pins. Now if I click on each one, it will show me the name. That's Cache Delta. And look how close it is, 85 feet, right? So we are here, the pin shows that it's right there. So if we start walking that way, we will find it. All right, so you can see as we're walking, we're getting closer. And again, you can use just GPS in your phone. You don't need cell signal. You can download the maps for offline use. And when I was on the satellite, I found there was some kind of bush, and I think this is it. So it looked like it was about 20 feet from the street. It looked like it was just kind of offset, and I think this is it. And it's showing, we're right at the dot right now, and I would say this is it. All right, so this would be really useful, because if we are in a field like this and we don't have that very specific lat-long coordinates, how are we going to find this? There's all kinds of places to hide something in this field. There's, that little palm tree over there, the big one down there. There's so much, and that's a benefit if you're trying to be discreet. It's a curse if you're trying to locate something that you tried to hide from other people and now you can't find it yourself. This is the list, and within this list, you have your dropped pins, and each dropped pin is actually a location, cache B, cache A, but it's sorted in order of distance from where we are right now. And you can see here also that within each location, I have a description of what I've put in each cache. Dog supplies in this one, 20-watt solar panel, USB flashlight in that one. I know where to find them. Now, you YouTubers, some of you guys are absolutely insane. So before you go digging up these locations and thinking that you're gonna pull a fast one on me and punishing me for trying to do what I think is a helpful video, hopefully. I don't know why some of you guys are just absolute sociopaths. These are fake. I don't have anything buried here. And I know you're not gonna believe me, so go dig them up. Find out for yourself, but there's nothing here. These are fake. So what you can do is share this whole list. So if you go here to share, you can see here, share list. Anyone with the link can view the list. And then if you turn that on, it becomes edit. So right now it's view only. If I toggle this on, now anybody I share this list with will be able to add their own locations, their own waypoints, whatever they've stashed. They can add their own names, cache Echo, cache Foxtrot. They can add the items they've added to it. So that's a great thing about using the Google Map technology, because it allows you to start at home or start wherever you are and figure out, okay, this looks like it's a place where I'd like to add a waypoint. And let me show you how to add one. It's really easy. You just, when you're browsing, when you have internet access, and you just click, wherever you want. The more you zoom in, the more precise the detail. So let's say we always like putting it on corners, because then it becomes like an arrow. We know exactly where. So we want to get it real close to the corner. So we put a pin right there. We just click on it. That's pretty close. Next, we hit save. And then, since you already created a list, we add it to the list. You can add to multiple lists, but this is the one we're using, stashed cache GPS lat long. We can add a note. Let's say we're going to put in head lamps, something like that, okay? All right, so now we have the contents of what's in that cache. We need to give it a name, so we're going to do label, and we'll say cache Echo. Done. All right, there it is, cache E. It's a 9-minute car drive from here. We could actually measure the distance from where we are. But the most important thing is we have that lat long. So with that lat long, we can export it. We could obviously create a comma delimited list. And the reason you do that is you can upload those coordinates to other devices, Garmin devices, Garmin Instinct watches, inReach devices. It's very versatile, but for now we're just going to keep this in the Google Maps format. We have a list now that should have 5 items. So we go here, we go to your places, we look at your places, we look at our list, stash cache, see 5 locations now, and that should pop up in a moment. So this would be a lot faster if you did it at home, but there we go. Okay, so that's where we are, and the place where we just added the pin, it should be there, right there, cache E, all right? and headlamps. Okay, so this also is a useful overview if you've stashed, different types of hardware, different types of equipment throughout the county or throughout your HOA. Now you can at least see, okay, I have that headlamps there, I have dog supplies and drop pin there, and the lat long is right there. I can send this waypoint to somebody if, the cell towers are up. But the point is, you want to be able to share this whole list, and now everybody I share it with knows where I've stashed my caches. All right, so hopefully that helps. Thanks for watching.